He never deserved that condo. He just got lucky with his stupid research. What my brother screamed in court while being sentenced to 4 years. Original post. I never imagined I'd be writing something like this, but I need to document everything before I potentially lose the ability to defend myself. My name is Marcus Chen, I'm 30 years old, and I work as a senior pharmaceutical researcher at Prometheus Biotech in Boston. For the past 3 years, I've been leading a team developing a revolutionary treatment for rheumatoid arthritis, work that could fundamentally change how we approach autoimmune disorders. But right now, I'm sitting in my condo at 2 a.m., hands shaking as I type this, because my own mother is trying to destroy everything I've built. Let me start from the beginning, because the context matters here. My family has always been complicated. My mother, Linda Chen, 52, works as an office manager at Brennan, Hayes & Associates, a mid-sized law firm in downtown Boston. She's held this position for 15 years and has always prided herself on being more knowledgeable about legal matters than her job title suggests. She frequently boasts about how the senior partners consult her on procedural matters and how she's taught numerous junior associates how things really work. This self-perceived legal expertise has made her insufferably confident about matters far beyond her actual knowledge. My younger brother, Derek, 28, works as a certified property appraiser for New England Valuation Services. He's always been mother's favorite, the charming one, the social one, the one who chose a practical career instead of wasting time in laboratories like I did. Growing up, Derek could do no wrong. Failed his driving test 3 times? The examiner was biased. Got fired from his first job? The manager was jealous of his potential. Meanwhile, my full scholarship to MIT was met with comments about how I'd probably struggle to find real work after graduation. My father, James, passed away 5 years ago from pancreatic cancer. He was the buffer between my mother's controlling nature and the rest of us. A quiet engineer himself, he understood my passion for science and secretly encouraged me to pursue my doctorate despite my mother's objections. His death hit me hard, but it transformed my mother in ways I didn't anticipate. She became more controlling, more manipulative, and increasingly obsessed with money and property. The current situation started 8 months ago when I finally purchased my own place, a 2-bedroom condo in Cambridge, just a 10-minute walk from my laboratory. The property cost $680,000, which sounds insane to most people, but in this market, it was actually a reasonable price for the location and condition. I'd been saving religiously since graduate school, living in cheap rentals, driving a 12-year-old Honda, and avoiding vacations. Every bonus, every consulting fee, every penny beyond basic expenses went toward this goal. The condo meant everything to me. It wasn't just about owning property, it was about stability and proximity to my work. My research requires irregular hours. Sometimes I'm in the lab at 4 a.m. to check time-sensitive experiments, other times I'm there until midnight analyzing data. Living nearby means I can maximize my productivity without sacrificing sleep or safety. The building is secure, modern, and quiet, perfect for someone who needs to focus on complex scientific problems. When I announced the purchase at a family dinner, my mother's reaction was bizarre. Instead of congratulations, she immediately launched into an interrogation. What was the exact purchase price? What were the mortgage terms? What was my interest rate? How much had I put down? Did I have a proper inspection? Who was my attorney? The questions felt more like a deposition than a celebration. Derek's reaction was equally strange. He insisted on visiting the next day to professionally assess my purchase. He spent 2 hours measuring rooms, taking photos, and making notes in a leather portfolio he carried around importantly. He kept mentioning comparable sales in the building and talking about optimization potential and value capture opportunities. When I asked what he meant, he laughed and said I wouldn't understand the real estate game. Over the following months, their behavior escalated. My mother started showing up unannounced, often when she knew I'd be at work. The building's concierge, Robert, mentioned she tried to convince him she should have a spare key for emergencies. She brought Derek with her frequently, and they'd spend time in the lobby chatting with residents, especially the elderly ones. I thought she was just being friendly, maybe trying to ensure I had good relationships with my neighbors. Derek began sending me constant messages about my property. Articles about the Cambridge real estate market, suggestions for renovations that would add 6 figures to the value, contact information for contractors who could transform the space. He even created a detailed spreadsheet showing how much profit I could make if I sold within different time frames. When I told him I had no intention of selling, he called me financially naive and said I was sitting on a gold mine like an idiot. 3 weeks ago, everything changed. I received a call from my building's management company about an inspection my mother had scheduled. The property manager, Susan, said my mother had called claiming to be my healthcare proxy and expressing concern about the unit's safety given my deteriorating condition. Susan, thankfully, found this suspicious and called me directly. When I confronted my mother, she didn't even try to hide her intentions properly. She laughed and said she was just looking out for me, that my work schedule was clearly unsustainable, and that someone needed to make sure I wasn't letting valuable property deteriorate. The way she said valuable property made my skin crawl. There was a greed in her eyes I'd never noticed before. Last Monday, everything exploded. I was in the middle of a critical experiment when our lab administrator knocked on the door. She handed me an envelope that had been delivered by a process server. Inside were legal documents that made my blood run cold. My mother was petitioning the Norfolk County Probate Court to have me declared mentally incompetent and to have herself appointed as my conservator. The petition was professionally prepared, too professionally for someone without legal training. It alleged that I suffered from severe executive dysfunction manifested through obsessive work patterns, social isolation, and inability to maintain normal human relationships. The evidence cited was devastating in its manipulation of facts. I worked an average of 80 hours per week, often sleeping in my office. I had missed 7 family gatherings in the past year. I had no romantic relationship and limited social contact outside work. My refrigerator often contained only energy drinks and leftover takeout. I had been observed wearing the same clothes multiple days in a row. Multiple neighbors had expressed concern about my erratic schedule. The petition included 3 affidavits. My mother's was a masterpiece of manipulation, painting her as a devoted mother watching her brilliant son descend into work-induced madness. Derek's described finding me disoriented and confused during visits, unable to discuss anything beyond my research. The third was from Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, my 80-year-old neighbor, stating she was deeply worried about my mental state and believed I needed immediate intervention. What the petition really focused on, though, was my property. It argued that someone in my deteriorated mental state couldn't properly manage such a significant asset. It claimed the property was at risk of neglect, that I might make poor financial decisions regarding it, and that immediate transfer of management rights was necessary to preserve the asset. It requested emergency conservatorship over both my person and my estate. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. This wasn't concern, this was a coordinated attack. They were trying to steal my home, my autonomy, and ultimately, my career. Because here's what most people don't understand. The moment someone is declared mentally incompetent, their professional life is over. My security clearance for pharmaceutical research would be revoked. My DEA license to handle controlled substances in research would be terminated. My position as principal investigator on multiple grants would be nullified. Years of groundbreaking research would be handed to someone else. I immediately called Elizabeth Chen, an attorney specializing in elder abuse and conservatorship defense whom a colleague had mentioned once. She agreed to meet me that evening. When I showed her the documents, her expression went from professional interest to genuine alarm. "This is sophisticated," she said, reading through the petition. "Someone with legal knowledge prepared this. The language, the citations, the structure, this isn't an amateur job." She pointed out specific phrases that only someone familiar with Massachusetts conservatorship law would know to include. She also noted that the timing was suspicious, filed on a Monday morning, with a hearing scheduled for just 2 weeks later, the minimum time allowed by law. Elizabeth immediately went to work. She filed an emergency response challenging the petition and requesting a continuance. She also recommended I hire a private investigator, saying, "In 30 years of practice, I've learned that when family members attempt something this brazen, there's always more beneath the surface." The investigator, a former state police detective named Michael Torres, began work immediately. Within 3 days, he'd uncovered disturbing information. Through public records and surveillance, he discovered that Derek had been accessing my building repeatedly over the past 6 months, always during my work hours. Security footage showed him photographing apartment numbers, examining the mailroom, and spending significant time in the parking garage where storage units are located. More disturbing was what Torres found through social media analysis. Derek's girlfriend, Rachel, had been posting photos from expensive restaurants and mentioning upcoming vacations they couldn't possibly afford on their salaries. In one post, she'd written, "Derek says our ship is about to come in. Can't wait to share the news. House Moneybag." This was dated 3 weeks before my mother filed the petition. Torres also discovered that my mother had been accessing her law firm's computers after hours. Keycard records showed her entering the building at unusual times, weekends, late evenings, always when the office was empty. The firm's IT system would have logs of what she accessed, but we'd need a subpoena for those. As we prepared for the hearing, more pieces fell into place. Elizabeth subpoenaed financial records and discovered that Derek had created a limited liability company called DNL Property Solutions 4 months ago. The filing was made in Delaware, not Massachusetts, clearly an attempt to avoid easy detection. My mother was listed as co-owner. The company's stated purpose was real estate acquisition, management, and optimization. The hearing was yesterday, and I need to document everything while it's fresh in my mind. Update 1, 2 weeks later, after the hearing. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Judge Janet Morrison presided, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. My mother arrived with an attorney from Whitman & Pierce, a firm that typically charges $500 an hour, far beyond what an office manager should be able to afford. Derek sat behind her, wearing his best suit and attempting to look concerned rather than calculating. Elizabeth was brilliant from the start. She systematically demolished their case, presenting evidence of my competence that was overwhelming. My employment records showed not just adequate performance but excellence: 3 promotions in 5 years, 2 patents pending, and a recent commendation from the CEO for breakthrough research. My financial records demonstrated meticulous management, investments diversified across index funds and bonds, automatic bill payments never missed, charitable contributions carefully documented for tax purposes. Your Honor, Elizabeth said, Mr. Chen maintains the kind of detailed financial records that would make an accountant weep with joy. This is not a man who cannot manage his affairs. The judge asked my mother's attorney, Mr. Whitman himself, to present specific evidence of incompetence beyond lifestyle choices. Whitman attempted to argue that my work schedule indicated obsessive-compulsive disorder, that my lack of romantic relationships suggested social dysfunction, and that missing family gatherings demonstrated inability to maintain normal human connections. Judge Morrison's response was sharp. Mr. Whitman, are you seriously arguing that dedication to pharmaceutical research during a critical trial phase constitutes mental incompetence? Half of Boston's medical researchers would be in conservatorship if we applied that standard. Then Elizabeth dropped our bombshell. She presented the evidence Torres had gathered: the Delaware LLC, the after-hours computer access, Derek's suspicious building visits, and crucially, text messages between Derek and Rachel that Torres had legally obtained through Rachel's cooperation. Rachel, it turned out, had developed a conscience. When Torres approached her, identifying himself as an investigator looking into potential fraud, she broke down. She provided screenshots of hundreds of messages between her and Derek discussing their plans. The messages were damning. Once Mom gets control, we move fast. List it at $850,000, we can close in 30 days. Marcus will be so busy trying to get his job back, he won't even fight the sale. Mom found a buyer already. Cash offer, no inspection. Split is 60-40, Mom gets the bigger cut because she's taking the legal risk. One message revealed they knew about my research. Jake from Biogen says Marcus's drug is going to be huge. We're talking millions in royalties. Mom says with conservatorship, we control everything. Not just the condo, his patents, his savings, everything. The judge read these messages in chambers, and when she returned, her face was flushed with anger. She not only dismissed the petition with prejudice but also issued immediate restraining orders against both my mother and Derek. Then she did something I didn't expect. She referred the case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. This court finds clear evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud, she stated. The attempted manipulation of conservatorship laws designed to protect vulnerable individuals for personal gain is not just morally reprehensible, it's criminal. The aftermath was swift. My mother's law firm placed her on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. When they learned she'd used firm resources for personal fraud, they terminated her the next day. 15 years of employment, gone. The Massachusetts Board of Bar Overseers opened an investigation into her misuse of legal resources, though she wasn't an attorney herself. Derek's employer suspended him when they received notice from the State Board of Real Estate Appraisers about the investigation. His license was temporarily suspended pending a full ethics review. But they didn't stop. 3 days after the hearing, building security called me at the lab. My mother and Derek were in the parking garage, attempting to break into my storage unit. They'd somehow obtained a key. We later learned Derek had made a copy during one of his visits. Security detained them until police arrived. They were arrested for violating the restraining order, attempted breaking and entering, and possession of burglary tools. Derek had brought a crowbar and bolt cutters. The police search revealed more evidence. Derek's phone contained detailed photos of my condo, annotated with renovation plans and cost estimates. There were emails to contractors about rush renovation jobs, dated before the conservatorship petition was even filed. My mother's purse contained a forged power of attorney document with my signature, a laughably poor forgery that she apparently planned to use if the conservatorship failed. The prosecutor, James Wellington, took personal interest in the case. His own mother had recently passed from Alzheimer's, and he'd seen how actual conservatorship proceedings worked when genuinely needed. The contrast with my situation enraged him. They perverted a system designed to protect the vulnerable, he told me. That's not just fraud, it's an assault on justice itself. The charges filed were serious: conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted theft over $250,000, a felony, forgery, violation of vulnerable adult protection laws, and criminal trespass. If convicted of all charges, they each faced up to 15 years in prison. Update 2, 2 months later, criminal proceedings. The criminal cases proceeded faster than expected. The evidence was overwhelming, and both defendants knew it. My mother's attorney negotiated a plea deal first. She would plead guilty to conspiracy to commit fraud and forgery in exchange for dropping the other charges. The prosecutor agreed, partially because of her age and lack of prior record, but mainly because she agreed to testify against Derek if needed. Her allocution was chilling. Standing before Judge Robert Brennan, she admitted to planning the conservatorship fraud for over 6 months. She detailed how she'd researched conservatorship law using her firm's legal databases, identified the specific language needed to make a compelling petition, and orchestrated Derek's surveillance of my property. She admitted to forging multiple documents, including the power of attorney and false medical records suggesting I'd been treated for psychiatric issues. When asked why, her answer revealed a depth of entitlement I'd never imagined. I gave birth to him. I raised him. His success is my success. I deserved to share in his achievements. He was being selfish, hoarding wealth while his family struggled. The judge's response was harsh. Ma'am, your son's success came despite your interference, not because of your support. You attempted to destroy him out of greed and jealousy. You're not a mother, you're a parasite. She was sentenced to 3 years in state prison, with possibility of parole after 18 months. She was also ordered to pay $100,000 in restitution, though everyone knew she couldn't afford it. Derek, stupidly, decided to go to trial. His attorney argued that he was manipulated by our mother, that he was just following her lead. The jury didn't buy it. The text messages to Rachel showed he was an enthusiastic participant, even the architect of some aspects of the plan. The trial lasted 4 days. Rachel testified against him, describing conversations where he'd calculated exactly how much they could make from flipping my condo. She revealed that he'd been planning to use his share to start a property flipping business, using his appraiser credentials to identify undervalued properties and his newfound capital to purchase them. His own testimony was disastrous. He attempted to claim I actually was mentally unstable, that the conservatorship was genuinely for my benefit. When the prosecutor asked him to explain the LLC formation and the text messages about profits, he became flustered and angry, eventually snapping, he never deserved that condo. He just got lucky with his stupid research. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Judge Brennan sentenced him to 4 years in prison, with possibility of parole after 2 years. The longer sentence reflected his lack of remorse and his attempt to manipulate the trial process. Both were also ordered to pay significant restitution, which led to the next phase, civil proceedings. Update 3, 4 months later, resolution. The civil case was almost anticlimactic after the criminal convictions. With both defendants already found guilty of fraud, liability was essentially automatic. The only question was damages. Elizabeth pursued both compensatory and punitive damages. Compensatory damages included $15,000 in legal fees, $5,000 for the private investigator, $8,000 in therapy costs. I'd been seeing Dr. Sarah Martinez twice weekly. $12,000 in security upgrades to my home. $30,000 in lost productivity at work, documented by my employer. $450,000 for intentional infliction of emotional distress. The jury also awarded $300,000 in punitive damages, specifically citing the premeditated nature of the scheme and the attempt to use legal systems designed to protect the vulnerable. The total judgment was $820,000. Neither my mother nor Derek had anywhere near that amount in liquid assets. But they did have retirement accounts. The court ordered the liquidation of all available assets. My mother's 401k from 15 years at the law firm contained $285,000. Derek's various investment accounts totaled $235,000. Both amounts were seized and transferred to me. Their homes were also subject to liens, though my mother rented and Derek's house was heavily mortgaged. Surprisingly, their homeowners' insurance policies provided additional recovery. Both had personal liability coverage that, through a quirk in the policy language, covered certain intentional acts by family members. The insurance company paid out $180,000 before canceling their policies and announcing they were revising their coverage terms. In total, I recovered $700,000. Combined with my existing savings and a substantial raise following my research success, I was able to purchase a new home, a 3-bedroom condo in the same building but on a higher floor with better security and a view of the Charles River. The property cost $1.1 million, but it represents everything my family tried to steal from me and failed. Professionally, this ordeal led to unexpected advancement. My company was impressed by how I maintained research progress despite the personal crisis. Our rheumatoid arthritis treatment entered Phase 4 trials with exceptional results. The FDA fast-tracked our approval process. We expect market release within 8 months. I was promoted to Senior Director of Immunology Research with a salary increase to $275,000 annually. When the patents are finalized, my royalty share could be worth millions over the drug's lifetime. My mother began serving her sentence last month at MCI Framingham. She's in minimum security but has already lost her appeal for reduced time. Her former colleagues from the law firm have completely cut contact. She's become a cautionary tale in Boston legal circles about support staff who overstep boundaries. Derek is serving his time at Old Colony Correctional Center. His appraiser's license was permanently revoked. Even after release, he'll never work in real estate again. His wife, Rachel, married him despite everything, though I can't understand why, visits weekly. She sent me a letter apologizing again and thanking me for not pursuing charges against her for her initial participation. The extended family has been divided. My father's siblings have been supportive, with my uncle Robert actually testifying as a character witness during my civil trial. He revealed that my mother had approached him years ago about managing my assets when I was in graduate school, suggesting even then that I was too focused on science to handle money properly. My mother's family has largely cut me off, insisting I overreacted to a misunderstanding. My Aunt Helen actually had the audacity to ask if I could help with my mother's commissary account since she's suffering enough. I blocked her number. Final update, 6 months later, moving forward. I'm writing this from my new home office, watching the sunrise over the Charles River. Tomorrow, I fly to Geneva to present our research at the World Health Organization Symposium on autoimmune treatments. Our drug has shown unprecedented success in trials, 85% of patients showing significant improvement, 60% achieving full remission. We're not just treating symptoms, we're potentially curing a disease that affects millions. The irony isn't lost on me. While I'm presenting research that could revolutionize treatment for rheumatoid arthritis, my mother sits in a prison cell, and my brother faces 2 more years of incarceration. They could have been part of this success. They could have shared in my joy, my achievements, my life. Instead, they chose greed. I've continued therapy with Dr. Martinez, working through the complex emotions this betrayal created. She's helped me understand that my mother's behavior likely stemmed from narcissistic personality disorder combined with financial anxiety after my father's death. Derek's actions were born from golden child syndrome and enabled entitlement. Understanding doesn't mean forgiving, but it helps me process the trauma. I've established the Chen Foundation for Young Scientists with $200,000 from the settlement. It provides grants to graduate students from difficult family backgrounds who show promise in pharmaceutical research. The first recipient, Maria Santos, comes from a family who tried to force her to abandon her doctorate to work in the family restaurant. She's now developing novel antibiotics for resistant bacteria. My research team has expanded to 20 scientists. We're working on applications of our base compound for other autoimmune conditions, lupus, Crohn's disease, multiple sclerosis. Each breakthrough feels like a vindication of the life my family tried to steal. I've also found unexpected personal growth. I'm dating someone, Dr. Jennifer Park, a neuroscientist from Harvard. We met at a conference where I was presenting our research. She knows my entire story and has been incredibly supportive. Her own family embraced me immediately, showing me what healthy family dynamics actually look like. Last week, I received a letter from my mother through her attorney. She wanted me to know she's found God in prison and has forgiven me for destroying the family. She hopes I'll visit so she can offer her forgiveness in person. The narcissism is breathtaking. She forgives me for holding her accountable for trying to destroy my life. I didn't respond. Derek hasn't attempted contact, but I heard through the legal grapevine that he's trying to appeal his conviction based on inadequate representation. His argument is that his attorney should have pursued an insanity defense based on financial stress. It won't succeed, but it shows he still refuses to accept responsibility. Looking back, the signs were always there. My mother's resentment when I succeeded. Her attempts to control my choices. Her anger when I became financially independent. Derek's entitlement, his belief that my achievements somehow diminished him. The constant subtle undermining disguised as concern. They didn't just want my condo. They wanted to prove that my success wasn't real, that I didn't deserve what I'd earned. Taking my property would have validated their belief that I was just a lucky fool who needed their management. Instead, they proved the opposite. While they schemed and plotted, I was changing the world. While they forged documents and broke laws, I was developing treatments that will save lives. While they destroyed their own futures for the chance at stealing $680,000, I was building a career that will impact millions. The greatest revenge isn't the money I recovered or their imprisonment. It's the life I'm living, the life they tried to steal and failed. Every success, every breakthrough, every moment of happiness is a testament to their failure. To anyone facing similar family betrayal, know this: their greed is not your responsibility. Their jealousy is not your burden. Their crimes are not your shame. You have the right to protect yourself, to pursue justice, and to build the life you deserve without apology or guilt. My name is Dr. Marcus Chen. I'm 31 years old. I lead groundbreaking pharmaceutical research. I own a beautiful home. I have a loving relationship and chosen family who actually support me. And I have 2 family members in prison who will never again have the opportunity to destroy what I've built. That's not a tragedy. That's justice.